So welcome everybody. I'm Cindy Wasser from Hope Springs Fertility Law out of Toronto, Ontario. I have the largest fertility law firm in Canada, which is 5 people, small but mighty we say. So I started my practice about 11 years ago, having been a criminal defense lawyer for about 25 years and starting my first fertility journey with an egg donor and a surrogate to make my family. We had what's known in Canada as probably the worst journey. And when my daughter was born healthy at the end of it, almost 11 years ago, I turned to my husband and said, no one should have to go through this to become a parent. This has to change, and this will change. And that's how I became a fertility lawyer. And my focus was to protect the rights of intended parents such as myself and to make sure their journeys were fantastic and that they could realize their dreams of making a family in a safe and healthy environment in what I think is obviously the best country in the world. So I began working with government to streamline the process, to make it more fair, to have recognition of the rights of our children to be treated the same as any other child born in any other manner, which meant recognition of your rights as legal parents immediately. And so in the 8 minutes I have, or less, I'm going to talk mainly about birth registration in Canada and a little bit about American immigration. I am not an American attorney. I cannot give you real advice about American law. So I always recommend that my foreign clients, meaning anyone who doesn't live in Canada, should have legal advice locally. In your case, an immigration lawyer, because having a baby abroad has immigration consequences. And a local lawyer to ensure that your parental rights are protected in the state in which you live and bring the baby back to. Those are two separate issues. Do not confuse them. In Canada, your baby will be born a Canadian citizen. And in the provinces, they have a system set up for registering the birth. That is a provincial jurisdiction. So whether the baby's in Ontario or Quebec or Alberta will vary slightly in how it happens. But virtually everyone can become a parent, whether you go to court and have a judge declare it, or whether you can do it administratively like in Ontario where I am. We can put 1 or 2 fathers on the birth certificate as you direct. It's not an issue. We don't care whether you're married. We don't care what your religious background is. We don't care about your sexual orientation. We don't even care about your gender. You can start as a man, turn into a woman, start as a woman, turn into a man. We just have a lot of paperwork. But we absolutely guarantee the rights and the dignity of every human being. And that includes the newborn at the time it's born. So, in Ontario, where I am from, I have worked very hard with the legislators to develop a program that streamlines birth registration. You are recognized as the parents at the moment of birth. As the parents, you will register the birth of your Canadian baby. In Ontario, you can do that in one of 2 ways. There's an administrative declaration that you fill out on day 7 after the birth. You have all the rights of a parent in between that, but we give the surrogate some time to recuperate at home without lawyers bugging her and saying, sign this at the hospital. So you're the parents, you're there at the hospital, you go back to your hotel or apartment with your baby for the week, and on day 7 we sign the paperwork, send it to our registrar, and usually by day 14, 1 week later, you have a birth certificate. Because you live in another country and you're bringing that Canadian baby back home, you have to deal with the immigration issue at your border. Until recently, that was really easy to do. Your administration has made it a little bit more complicated for you, and hopefully that will change in another year. So, in the meantime, the law has actually never changed as I understand it. It has always been that when a baby is born abroad, you can only establish its American citizenship if the biological parent is American. Add to it surrogacy. The law has always said that that baby is born out of wedlock. The biological father and the surrogate had the baby. It does not matter if the biological father is married to another. He's had the baby with the surrogate. And when a baby is born abroad, out of wedlock, the biological father must prove American citizenship and residency for 5 years in this country prior to the birth. That's my understanding, taken from Homeland Security's page and talking to about 17 American lawyers. So I always suggest you speak to an American immigration lawyer. It doesn't matter in what state they practice, because that's countrywide here, and they will help you. I've been asked about 20 times today, what if I'm about to be American? I've lived here for 5 years, but I haven't been American. I do not believe that that counts. It's American for 5 years, but I'd speak to an American immigration lawyer to be sure. So the other parent should be the father if he's been American and lived here for 5 years. This administration is enforcing that rule. In the past, they never did, so people didn't have this issue. All the news you've heard, the scandals, the lawsuits against State Department are about a non-resident biological father or mother. And it's become a problem, and hopefully it will be reversed in your legal process or by a different administration. So the next part is establishing parental rights in the state, assuming you bypass the immigration issue. You're coming back to a state. That's done here state by state, so you need to speak to a state lawyer in which you live in. In New York State, my understanding from working with several lawyers is you have to do a step-parent adoption. And they asked me to provide a court order from my judges saying these people have been declared the parents, which is another way of doing it. In most provinces offer the court order. So that's what we do. In any event, you also have to visit the embassy in the country in which your baby was born to fill out a birth abroad format. And you can get appointments at the embassy in Toronto within days of getting the Canadian birth certificate. People watch the website and they keep making appointments and canceling them, making them the next day till the birth certificate comes. But most of my clients are able to get home 2 to 2.5 weeks post-birth, no problem. So I've got